Hello, and welcome again to another episode of Battle Ready. Right. Where today we thought we'd talk about a topic that I thought, has come up a couple times on the interwebs, and that is, why do we play Warhammer? Warhammer. Not why do we wargame, because there's lots of other wargames, right?
Yeah.
There's War Machine and Hordes, there's Battletech, there's Malifaux, there's Moonstone. Right? There's all these different ones.
One-page rules,
right? So why Warhammer? Or at least why did we pick Warhammer over everything else? I can tell you what the easy answer for most people is. Most people pick it because it's easy to find a game.
Yep.
Right? You can go to your local store, your local game store, your
There'll
local
be 6
Warhammer
people.
store, and be like, anybody here want to play 40K? And you'll find some people that are like, yeah, let's play. Let's play now. We'll play next week. I'll bring my army. But you show up with Moonstone, you might not have any other players, right? And that means you need to have 2 armies so that you can give one to a friend.
And the rules.
And it means you need to read all the rules and be able to teach all the rules, which might be worth it if the game is great, right? But it is a lot more of an investment. So if you just pick Warhammer, then it's way more likely you're going to be able to find people to play with. But that doesn't really apply to us, because we just play Drake and I in the garage.
Yeah.
And so the question is, well, why didn't we pick one of those other games? What do you think?
I really have no idea. You go first.
You don't know.
He just walks up to me one day and says, Drake, let's start a war game. What 2 armies do you want to pick?
No, that's not how it happened. Drake's too young to remember how it happened.
Hey.
Well, actually, the way that it happened was during COVID.
Yeah,
my wife, Drake's mother, took Drake to the Warhammer store.
Yes, now I remember.
And Drake bought a White King with Baleful Tombblade.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
I think it was
a
just
little
called
standing up White King.
Yeah.
And it was super cool, and Drake got super into it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, maybe this will be fun. And at the time, COVID was happening, right?
Yeah.
So we couldn't go, to the movies, right? We weren't doing any other entertainment. And I thought, well, let's try out this Warhammer thing. Bought the Soul Wars starter box.
Oh.
Not the launch box,
Yeah.
the starter box that comes later.
And what happened was you walked up and said, Drake, what 2 armies do you want us to pick?
No.
Yes, you did.
No.
Yes, you did.
Because there were only 2 armies in that box. I might have told you, which one do you want of these 2?
No, you gave me a list of armies. And I picked Nighthaunt and Stormcast.
No.
And then there happened to be the Soul Wars box for Nighthaunt and Stormcast.
No, this is all made up.
You walked...
It's all made up in Drake's little 8-year-old brain or 9-year-old brain or whatever.
He walks up to me with a
Memories
list.
transferred over time.
He walks up to me with a list. He says, Drake, here's a list of armies. Which 2 do you want to have us start collecting? And I pick Stormcast
See, it gets more elaborate every time. First it was I just ask him. Now I walk up with a list. Soon I'll be like opening a chest and it glowed with the names of all the armies. No, I don't think so. But in any event, that's how we ended up getting into it, because it was the one that we started and we just stuck with it. But just because we started there doesn't mean we have to keep playing Warhammer forever. So why do we keep playing Warhammer as opposed to doing other things?
Pretty plastic toys.
So I think that's part of it. I mean, Warhammer or Games Workshop models are pretty fantastic. They're really, really good. And if you look at models from other companies, the plastic can be a little bit softer, the details a little bit more fuzzy. And then a lot of times one of the things I really like about Age of Sigmar is they're just extra about a lot of things. There's stuff is bigger, stuff is weirder, stuff is more dangly and creepy. Whereas a lot of places, you can get orcs or goblins in a lot of different places, but sometimes they just sort of look like goblins. Mm. But you can only get rock gut Troggoths, right? That look how they look with their big ears and their weird faces.
Yeah.
That's a Games Workshop. Or you can get ghouls. A lot of D&D. You can get some ghoul miniatures, but they're just normal guys with skinny bellies that you paint green.
Yeah.
Whereas the Games Workshop, especially the more recent ghouls,
they look like knights.
They have knight stuff. Evil. They've got ratty hair. I mean, they've got all kinds of cool stuff.
Wig of intestines.
The wig of intestines. Yeah, that's a great example, right? He's got the judge wig, but it's intestines. You're not going to find that anywhere else, right? That's not going to be a thing anywhere else.
Also, lore is another thing I was going to say.
All right, so that's interesting that you bring up lore, because Warhammer 40K and AOS, I think, both have phenomenal lore. I think they do a really good job of setting up the stories. I think they do a good job of identifying and giving each faction sort of a good flavor and a good feel to it. But they're not the only game with lore.
Yeah.
I mean, there's games out there that basically have no lore, and I personally have a little bit of a hard time getting into it. Yeah. If there's not some lore. And I know people say, well, you just make up your own. The lore in your head's better than the lore on the page. And for me, I don't know that that's true.
Neither.
maybe I'm not creative. Maybe we're not as creative as we should be. Maybe if we could make up good headcanon lore, it'd be better.
I did sort of.
Yeah, so, see?
Walgram's fiddle.
But I feel like it needs that baseline. But there are games that have really good lore, like Trench Crusade just came out. Are you aware of Trench Crusade?
No.
All right, so the lore of that game, generally, is that demons from hell escaped during the Crusades, during the Knights Templar.
Ooh.
And there's been a war between the good guy. Well, I shouldn't say good guys and bad guys because they're all bad. It's very grim dark. But between the church and the demons and some other factions, and it's gotten all the way to now it's World War I time. So they've got.
And it's still going on.
So they've got tanks and stuff, and yeah. So, but they've all got lore. They've all got things they want to do. Oh, now you like that?
That sounds awesome. I've been watching hour-long videos on the Siege of Rax. I'm way too deep into trench warfare.
Oh, very good. So, but there's stuff like that, and then Malifaux has a lot of lore behind it, right? So, I don't know that lore by itself is sufficient. Although I will say, we've played a couple games of one-page rules, the Age of Fantasy, and Now
that Spirit came out, feels like one-page rules with the cards is just big Spearhead.
Yeah, but I think Spearhead's just way better implemented. So one-page rules, I think partly it's because the lore wasn't great, but I thought we would make up for it, sorta.
I didn't know there was lore.
Each faction had like a couple paragraphs. But there's not like an overarch, there's no like mortal realms. But I thought, if we're using our Warhammer models, we could just use that lore, right? It's still Stormcast versus Nighthaunt. We're just using a different rule set for the battle, but we could still use that lore.
Didn't we?
And yet it still felt a little
like
hollow.
Like we're using quarters with little sticks of paper instead of models.
No, I mean the models still look cool. I mean it still looks cool on the table, but I just felt like I was just watching guys do stuff. It didn't have the sort of the gravitas.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say about Warhammer, as opposed to some of these other games, is that so I shouldn't say that. I guess there's a lot of expense with Warhammer, but no war game is cheap. They're all sort of expensive. But you do pay more on Warhammer than anything else. Games Workshop does
Warhammer tax.
Yeah, there's a Warhammer tax. But one of the things I think is sort of cool about it is I like the level of complexity that Warhammer brings. Because Warhammer is, now some people might not. Some people might say, it's too complex, or it's not complex enough. We need to add more systems in there with strength and toughness and all kinds of different stuff. And I feel like Warhammer, or at least Age of Sigmar, is complex enough that with their 2 wounds and the different buffs you can do and all this different stuff, and that makes it a little bit opaque, where you can't always tell when you're reading it. You're not always sure. It's like, ooh, that's the best move. I'll just do that every time. It's like, I don't know if that is the best move because there might be other stuff, right? So there's enough question marks where you feel like, I got to test it out. But at the same time, it's not so opaque and it's not so bogged down in rules like BattleTech. And that might be a little harsh. I've read the rules for BattleTech. I've never played it, so maybe it makes super sense. Yeah, it's sci-fi. It's like your mech warriors.
Ooh, Adeptus Mechanicus guys walking around.
Yeah, sort of. So maybe it's way cooler and it's way easier than it seems, and I'm making a big deal about it. But some things are just so complex that it's the kind of thing I probably would have really liked in my teens and 20s. And now, maybe it'll be just right up Drake's alley.
Yeah.
But now I'm looking
Robots.
for something that's just a little bit more fun, right? Because BattleTech has all kinds of things. At least the older edition, they might have changed it up in the new. I know they just came out with a new version not too long ago. But they have things like when you roll to hit, then you hit, but you don't just roll for damage because you have to see what part of the robot you hit.
That's just like Warhammer.
And based on what part of the robot you hit, different effects can be applied.
Yep.
And so stuff, but there's a lot more. I mean, Gorka Morka is a more streamlined version compared to that.
Warhammer has like 20 tables.
Yeah, BattleNet has a lot.
You have a table for
BattleTech.
where you hit, and then each sub-table has a table.
Yeah. So anyway, that I do think, I think that when it comes to the rule weight and rule complexity, Age of Sigmar in particular, I don't know if 40K does quite as well, but Age of Sigmar in particular hits that medium where I'm happiest, right?
Yeah.
And for some people, like I said, it's going to be too complex, you want something simpler. And for some
Okay.
people are going to look at that and say, okay, this is a baby game for babies. I want the real meat game. And
40K.
then you play something else. Well, I don't know. 40K is probably not that much more.
They've got a whole strength and toughness.
They do have more. It is more, for sure. But I do think that that's one of the reasons why we kept going with Age of Sigmar is because rules-wise, strategy-wise, the balance is right, I think, where we like it.
Also, big stompy orcs.
It's hard to get away from Age of Sigmar's big stompy orcs because sometimes
Yeah.
they just have stuff that's really cool, right? I mean, every game has like their centerpiece, their big model or whatever. 40K does, but I think Age of Sigmar, some of the stuff they have, the Ma Crushas are cool. The
Got the lady on the giant thing, the giant lion for cities.
Talia.
Yeah, who had just a head on a stick.
Yes, super cool. Gobsprack, cool. What's the FEC guy? Usharon, cool. I mean, they do big centerpiece models
I like
really,
Catacross.
really well. Catacross, I think Catacross is a little
Large.
large.
It's got his base has 6 guys.
Yeah, it's almost like a diorama.
Bodyguards, messengers, messenger birds, him.
It's almost like a diorama. But the idea is, I think that especially when you get to those bigger centerpiece models, it's really tough to find games that are as cool as Games Workshop. Because some games do go out a little extra, like Conquest Last Argument of Kings. They've got like a zombie Roman faction.
Roman zombies?
Yeah, they're like Roman legionnaires, but they're undead.
They're even more unkillable.
And they've got weird factions that are cool and sort of you could see sort of that same idea being incorporated into AOS. Mm-hmm. But
isn't that already what Flesh Eater Courts is? Just ghouls?
No, but I mean they're Roman. They've got the gladiuses and they're like Romans, but they're undead.
Okay. So it's a little different from ghouls, but
Yes, it's a little different because
In the
ghouls are
city.
under a delusion and they think they're knightly. They think they're like King Arthur-y, right? And Romans are Roman.
the zombies understand what they're doing.
I don't know all the details, but yeah, I don't think it's a delusion thing.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I think that for us, the fact that it has so many good things to it, it's got really good models.
Yeah, orcs.
Are they the only game with good models? No, but they have good models.
Yeah.
They've got really good lore.
Yeah.
Are they the only game with good lore? No, but they have really good lore.
Although I've read the books and they're awesome.
They do have good lore.
So good.
They have really good centerpieces, right? Are they the only game with good centerpieces? Probably not, but they're really good.
They have the tallest centerpiece.
The rules level is really good. The complexity level is really good and makes the game very fun. I'm sure it's not the only game that hits that complexity that we really like, but it does. So when you add it all up, you could find lots of games, I think, that meet 1 or 2 criteria that are really good. But Age of Sigmar in particular just hits every beat. The only thing that's missing, reasonable cost.
That's never going to happen.
Reasonable cost.
We're never going to have that.
I guess you can't have everything. But
No perfect world can
no.
have Games Workshop at low cost.
no, I guess not. Maybe in some timeline they're reasonably priced, but not in this timeline.
It's as unthinkable as...
So you couldn't even think it.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, let us know in the comments below. If you play other games, great. I mean, that's awesome. I also think one other thing. is I think that there's a little bit of sunk cost, right? We've already spent so much money on, I think we've got like 10 or 11 armies now, that it just hurts to go spend even more money on some other game to get a couple armies for that, right? It's just like, I've already spent this much money. I just want to play with the toys I have. I want to go that way. So there is a little bit of that, a little bit of sunk cost, or maybe it's Stockholm Syndrome.
I don't know that syndrome.
So we've just been abused so hard that now we like it. We get abused by getting paid, having to pay so much money. But anyway, let us know in the comments your thoughts. And if you play multiple games, that's awesome. Tell us if there's any games that are in the sort of same range, especially of complexity, of Age of Sigmar, and I think we would be down to learn about that. But also, if you play Warhammer, particularly Age of Sigmar, what keeps you playing that? Why do you want to play that either over other games or in the rotation with other games? Why is that coming to your table on a regular basis? Hopefully it is. Any final thoughts?
I think we got them all.
All right. This has been another episode of Battle Ready.
Ready! He came to me with a list about which armies.
Never happened. Thank you so much for watching.